What's up, Talk Dog to Me listeners? This is Matt, Leia's husband. I know what you're thinking. Why are we listening to Matt and not Leia make the fun intro? Well, I wanted to tell you that I accidentally screwed up the audio specifically for Carrie on this episode, so I apologize to Carrie and everybody listening that you can't hear her very well. You can still hear her, but the audio is just not very good for this episode for the first portion. So I apologize. However, it's super valuable, so we really wanted to include it. So without any further ado, here's Leia for the actual introduction.
You're listening to Talk Doc to Me, a podcast and community dedicated to candid conversations around documentary storytelling. I'm your host and fellow filmmaker, Leia DeLeon, and we have a couples roundtable today featuring Mark Pedri and Carrie McCarthy, and my husband, Matthew Meredith. Mark is an award-winning documentary director, writer, and big thinker from Wyoming, and Carrie is a scientist turned producer and organizing queen. Together, they spearhead Burning Torch Productions, where they create feature films and short docs that transport you into unique worlds. From the history of Pilates, to the untold journey of a family member during World War II, to the adventures of a 6-year-old mountain climber. The four of us discuss the unique lifestyle we live as couples who own documentary production companies. The highs, the lows, and the honest truth of how we pay the bills. So, if you own your own production company or thinking about starting one, this episode is for you. We are here in San Diego. We are on my couch. Mark and Carrie are with us. We're so excited to have you.
Yeah, North Park, San Diego.
Well, let's start with how you got into documentary filmmaking.
So I started making safety videos for the local mine, and that turned out to be really cool because it's a window into this life, this world that is fascinating. If you're not a miner, you have no idea what goes on down there. So
like internal videos of like, this is what you need to do to make sure you don't
die. Exactly. Like don't wear shorts, closed-toed shoes,
Right.
Mandatory.
But in order to do that, you get to go like a mile down into the mine and you get to ride around. There's a mine near where we are from that has as many streets as San Francisco, underground, a mile.
Whoa.
So to make a safety video, you think, oh, that might sound boring, but it's actually kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's like another version of
Disneyland.
How do you film in a mine?
It was, you have a headlamp. We took some lights down there. There's a lot of rules though, because, for example, some mines, maybe like flammability is a big deal, obviously. So you can only have certain lights. And that was back before LED was a big thing. And it was more like the lights that get really hot and start fires easily. So
how old were you at that time when you were making the safety videos?
Junior college, so okay. 19, 20 probably. Pretty young. Probably too young to be making safety videos. But they were great because like I put this like heavy metal soundtrack to it.
Nice. Right.
And this guy came up to me one day and he's like, dude, that video you made, I hate it. He's like, I have to watch it every day I go to the mine and that song is like seared into my soul.
That's
so
funny.
God.
So, but the funny thing is that was one of the first projects Carrie and I collaborated on because I like got this contract to make these videos and I needed like an actor to like act out, wearing shorts when you're not supposed to. So I like filmed Carrie in like shorts with work boots and had to like put a big X over it.
So you were the rule breaker.
Yeah, that's right. I was wearing shorts in the mine.
And I think like that also was kind of the beginning of when Carrie would be like a little bit more of kind of like organizational, knowing how to move forward with a project, as opposed to me like jumping in and be like, yeah, I'll make safety videos, no problem. And then she would like look at the schedule and be like, all right, how exactly are you going to accomplish this? You have like 13 scenes and 2 hours. This is not going to work. And she would kind of then naturally flew into that producerial
So you were
role.
friends? Let's rewind. Tell me about the love story so I get this timeline right. When did you guys get together?
Yeah, so we were dating in college, long distance. Mark was in Chicago and I was in Wyoming. And we got together in the summertime because we're from the same town. And then he finished at school in Chicago and came to Wyoming and we were dating there. And that's when he was doing the mine safety videos. So it was sort of, helping out with that. And at that time I was studying science. So it would help them out sometimes. And he did a film about energy production in Wyoming. And I was sort of like scientific consultant of like, how do you talk about this type of energy production? How do you say this type of thing? And so I kind of was like on the outside of it there. And then we continued on to grad school, him and film and me in science as well.
What kind of science?
All of science. Just science, gal. No, I was studying chemistry.
Okay.
So it was like renewable energy materials for like flexible solar cells and that kind of thing. So that's what brought us to LA together at USC. We studied separate things. Mark got a job in the industry and I was defending my thesis, and he was ready to move on from his job and I was not wanting to go into the industry of chemistry. And we had this project on his grandfather that we'd sort of come across, and we decided to jump in and, you know, make this film and try and have a production company together. That was in 2018, so 5 years ago.
It's a big jump to be studying chemistry and then decide to abandon it all for a production company.
Especially because that was always the safety net.
Yeah, I think that the thing is, so it was a PhD, and when you study to get a PhD, you end up just, it's like project management. So it's very much like producing. You have timelines, you have people, you have budgets, and it's very similar. So at first I was also like, all right, I don't know if I can actually do this. But as I've been doing it for the past 5 years, it really just feels kind of natural. And my mindset really fits the producerial role quite well, especially when you're working with such a creative, less organized mind.
I understand. It's like there's something in common we have. I don't know.
Yeah, do you feel that you guys have one mind is very good at spur of the moment creative, and the other person is good at putting that into a package that you can like create, like actually accomplish something with or something? Is that?
Yeah. That's pretty accurate.
I think so.
I think you need both, though. I feel like if I didn't have him as such a strong creative, like he needs to be creative or he'll like implode. If I didn't have that, I feel like I would crush us into a small spreadsheet and like it would be offensive. You know, like I would just organize too much.
Right. It's like the creative stuff is awesome, but then it's not a business without the other part of it.
Yeah, that's true. You need both in order to have a successful production company. Because if you go so creative, you only care about the creative aspect, then you will fail as a business. And if you care too much about the business, then the creativity also can't shine as much. And owning a production company, you're not only like making films, you're also running a business. And those are two completely different things. You got to have like so many different things on different paths almost. Like you need to have something that you're like cooking up in development always. You need something that's kind of in production. You need something that's in editing.
Right, but then at the end of the day, there's no rules too, because you need to do what's like best for your like mental health too, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like mental health wise, if I don't have something to organize and to be productive with, then I feel like we're not doing anything. And if he doesn't have something creative to work on, then he can't be the best. And also being partners, it's like sometimes you need that person to be your business partner. Sometimes you need that person to be your emotional support, and it's hard to switch between the two. So you have to look out for each other to be like, I don't think you're being creative enough. I think you need to edit some more or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, so when you first decided, okay, I'm not going to be a scientist anymore, I'm going to be a filmmaker, let's start a production company together. What were those first like discussions like, or what was that shared vision that you guys had in the beginning? And like, how'd you be like, okay, like we feel good, like let's go, you know? And what does your family think? You can say that afterwards.
Well, my family always knew that I was never going to have a job.
What makes you say that?
I mean, I was just always like doing the most random things, you know, just like hustle it and together. And I never needed to have like the mortgage, white picket fence life. You know, that was like never the dream. It was always more like, man, if like I had a buddy in New Zealand that would let me stay there for 3 months, rent free, and all I have to do is make a film, sign me up. So like that was the life I'd been leading for like probably since high school, you know. And so my parents were pretty, like they got to the point where they knew they were no longer pushing like the, you know, doctor, lawyer, accountant menu towards me.
Yeah.
And I think they were just grateful that I wasn't like, you know, imploding on the street or something, but like I was kind of thriving in this life. Maybe not financially, but personally. Carrie, is it different?
I think my family, I mean, you go into like all this school and they just assume you're going to get the job. And then I was like, so I'm not going to apply for any jobs. I'm going to make a film instead. And I think that they sort of just thought, oh, this is a thing. She's going to pivot back, and like, there's no way she would not use that degree. And then like, as we started building the company and started making more films, I think they started to understand that like the fallback on chemistry wasn't going to happen. And it took a while, but you just kind of have to do your own thing and show, like, if you love what you're doing and you have a great partner and a great team and it's successful, then they can't really say much, I guess, is the end of it. But to your question of when we first started, what was our thoughts? I honestly was like, I can pull back on chemistry. I could do that. It's scary when you're like, all right, we're both not going to have a paying job. We're going to try and make a film. And for ours, we were like, we're going to ride our bikes across Germany and support it. So like, it was making a film and like diving into something physically that was a little bit unexpected. So
daunting.
Yeah. And I think we just were like, you know what? It was like jumping off a cliff. And I think we both were looking for that at that moment. And we weren't sure, but I don't think we wanted to be sure.
Moment. And I think that's the why you do it. If you knew everything that you had to do, you would definitely not do it because it's too scary. It's too much. There's too many obstacles. But all you see is one obstacle right in front of you today. And you figure out a way to get around that. And I think that's like owning a production company in a nutshell. It's like, you can't think 10 years out. That's terrifying. Like, who knows what the industry is going to look like? You know, today we make revenue in like 10 different versions, and you know, they're all changing all at once. And I think it's like, it's just not a job that you can CEO. There's like no place for a CEO in our company.
Yeah.
But I think going back a beat, when we decided to like the vision for the company, I think a lot of it came down to, this was just the life that we wanted to live. And it wasn't, you know, we want to make the best movies that anyone's ever seen. It was like, no, we want to tell the stories that are accessible to us, that we feel are important. And we want to, you know, spend our lives, our time out there doing that. We don't want to save money up to then go on a vacation for a small amount of time in the place. We want to go there for 3 months, even if we're working, you know, almost the entire time.
Right.
How would you describe the lifestyle of someone that runs a production company like us? Or like, because I like what you said about, you know, you don't necessarily want like a white picket fence or a mortgage or something. Like, there's a lot of ideas of success or, you know, what that looks like. But I like the take on the lifestyle, because I think that's something that I feel like I've come to terms with a lot better in recent years of like, you know what, like, yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty and it's kind of a crazy wild ride, and your priorities shift for sure. But it's also like a lifestyle I would never change for, because there's a give and take there. But yeah, I'm curious what your guys' lifestyle usually looks like, or what it's been like so far.
I think for me, it's like, if I don't have something that I'm staying up all night to do, I don't have the energy to wake up the next morning. Does that make sense? It's a tired life, but it's like a very fulfilled tired. You know, you feel good. Like when you walk and exercise, you're sore, but you like that.
Yeah.
You'd rather be sore than like, you know, man, I'm not doing anything with my life.
Right. Training for the championship rather than anticipating monotony.
Even if the championship never comes, even if your life is literally just the training, you know, but like, that's what it is. Like when someone wins a championship, it's not about that one night. It was about like the entire life leading up to that. And that's a fun life.
Nearly no one in our life has a similar lifestyle. So it
is a hard lifestyle to explain. My brother all the time is like, I really don't understand your life.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't either, kind of.
And then you show up to like family Thanksgiving and it's just like so
you don't even know how to talk about it, because you can't like just, it's not like going on a trip and coming home and telling your family about it, because it's like you go to Europe for 6 weeks, there's like no log line of that experience. You basically moved to Europe or wherever you're shooting, and so I think there is it's hard to connect.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about our lifestyles. Our lifestyles are definitely weird as documentary filmmakers and production company or owners and couples. Actually, that is true. But like, so many people want to start a production company, or maybe not everyone, but a lot of people think about it. They're like, oh, like, you know, how do I make more money? Maybe I'll start my own production company. Like, what are those tips? We've stayed alive. You guys have stayed alive for 5 years. We've stayed alive for about 4 years.
Yeah, like 4.5.
So 4.5 years. So what do you feel like contributed to your success of just surviving as a company and a couple during this time?
That's a great question.
I think we should give Mark credit, to be fair. He started, so our company's called Burning Torch Productions. He had a dream when he was young, and he went in his garage. He started Burning Torch Productions, not officially, when he was in high school, and he like made a torch to like make this flame, and he made his own logo. So he was in high school and had this dream. We actually, the company didn't come about until later, but it's always
the LLC or whatever was
What year
much
was
later.
the dream had?
That was like 2008, 2007 probably. Yeah, that was early on. And
I think a bit of tangible advice is that oftentimes you're not able to just start a production company and have a company. You know, if you want to own your own equipment, etc., that's a great idea because it allows you to pick up and shoot on a whim. But if you don't have capital to buy that, I think something good to start with is maybe don't jump in and quit your job all at once, but hop on a few projects, get going, get contacts, because I think one of the best things you can have as a production company is contacts and having people to crew up with or people to bounce project ideas off of. We find this working in Wyoming, it's isolating when it's just two people. So I think if you can build your network so that when you have a company, you can thrive. I think that's something that's helped us a lot. Collaboration.
yeah, and I think learn to like, don't pigeonhole yourself into like, I'm only a director, I don't shoot, I don't do sound, I don't PA. It's like, no, you need to be doing all of that stuff, especially early on, because like Carrie said, get your network, your group, and they're gonna call you up and say, hey, I need like a boom operator, and you just say yes, like say yes to everything. That's revenue, that's like building trust. And it's also, you know, now next time you need somebody, your company, you can't afford to hire, 20 people that like a Hollywood film set, basically everyone has their job, but you can build up like this social capital so that you have 20 people to call. And you're going to be working for reduced rates sometimes, and then they're going to return the favor when you really need it. And it's just like that camaraderie is really important. And slowly get as much gear as you can. Like buy a camera, rent it out. There's like 10 platforms now where you can rent out gear for as low as like $10 a day. So whether you're the one renting it for $10 a day or you're renting your camera to somebody else, like that does two things. One, it allows you to be able to shoot stuff really cheap with no overhead. Two, if you're on the renting side, you're meeting great people. You're meeting like people that are coming up with you. And those are the people doing interesting work. They're the ones that, are kind of like pulling the all-nighter because they have this music video that they're shooting with like a little bit of budget. And those like projects turn into something eventually, so.
What did you guys first invest in?
Like a 5D, that was just like my dream camera. I had to get like the full frame professional camera. And, there's like empowerment in having like a real camera.
Advice aside, like what was your guys' just like your trajectory as a company?
Well, Mark made some films earlier when we weren't like working together. So in the 20-teens, he made one about Pilates, which that is a niche group of people, and there wasn't a film about Pilates. So that was sort of a way to, which is also great advice. If you have some IP or an idea that is so niche, but there's an audience for it, get inside of that audience. They'll buy your film. They'll come to your screenings. They'll be your interview subjects, etc. I think that film was such a great little microcosm. And then once the film is done, you have a built-in audience for it.
Yeah, let's use that as like a case study. So this Pilates movie, it was just totally like not on brand for us, but like at the same time, you'll see why it's absolutely our brand. I grew up on like the skate films, like the Bruce Brown surf films, Endless Summer, all that. And my dream was to make that. But like all of these sports already had their film. And one of my good friend's mom got like really into Pilates, and I kind of saw that like this thing that she was doing impacted her life the same way that like skateboarding did for the people that I was hanging around with. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like nobody's made a Pilates film. What if we make the Endless Summer of Pilates? And if it's good, every Pilates studio in the world will want to have like movie night and like, let's, set up a screen, and because they have studio space. So those could be theaters. They have the passion, the community elements there. And, you know, as long as it's something that I can get into and care about as a filmmaker and an artist, it kind of seemed like all the pieces were there. So we shot a proof of concept for like $200, like legitimately just bare bones, scraped by.
Did you take a Pilates class before this?
I did. So I slowly got, like, that's the other thing. Like, we're not talking about, like, don't find a community and, like, exploit them. You have to become part of that community.
How was that for you? You signed up
they
and you're
destroyed me every time. Because I was, like, the young outsider, you know, and at the time I was, like, really scrappy from doing these alternative sports. And it was kind of just, like, this older, you know, like, refined Pilates crowd that's like, let me show you.
It would be like he would want to go interview them in their studio, and they're like, I will not let you interview me until you've done a Pilates lesson. And then they would just crush him, and he would be like, okay, I'm going to need a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer you need to become your character.
Yeah, because people are smart. Audiences are smart. People, like, if you don't have that connection, there's always going to be this, you know, separation in the film, whatever you make.
Do you find there's power in being a beginner in whatever this niche is or whatever this topic of the film is as like the director or the filmmaker, where you have this level of naivete to Pilates, for example, and so you understand what it's like to be someone who doesn't really know anything about it, but now you're trying it and you're learning it with all these experts that love it and you're picking their brains, so you become like sort of a pseudo expert in it, not truly, but you're about to try to teach people about it, so you're learning about it in a very interesting way. Like, do you find there's a lot of power in that naivete?
Yes, but it's dangerous power because you're coming at it somewhat objectively because you haven't chosen a lane, you know, within that industry, and you don't even know there are lanes. When I came into Pilates, I thought it was just one thing, and it turns out that, you know, there's all these different modalities of it and politics involved, and it's a very, you know, complicated subject. And as a result, there was a little bit of backlash for that reason because I was an outsider. And some people felt that the direction the film went didn't depict the version they wanted. But I think that's true with every film. You know, there's always going to be people that wish they would have had final cut on a film they never would have made themselves.
Sure. Well, and you have to pick an angle, right? Otherwise, your film is going to be a journalistic, you know, here are the facts versus like this interesting emotional roller coaster that has an angle to it. So you're always going to have somebody who kind of disagrees with the angle, probably.
That's
and I think
sure.
that's like a novice in whatever subject you're in. You have to toe that line of like, I'm new to this. Can you explain it to me? And people are not threatened by that. And they welcome you in. And like, I want to be the one that teaches you about that. So you're on that on one side. But you also don't want to be, like you said, an imposter where they're like, who is this person coming in to tell my story? What, you know, and you have to also be careful that maybe you're not the right person to tell that story. Maybe you would like to support someone who is, and you could, you know, collaborate with them. But I think there's that line of you're walking into a space that you've never been, and to be self-aware about that a little bit, I think it's very smart and necessary for sure.
Let's talk about money, the money side. To tie it to the Pilates thing, so we made this film, we did a Kickstarter, and the only reason the Kickstarter was successful, you know, because you only have so many friends and family that can give to like two Kickstarter campaigns in your life.
Beg for. I'm like, is this worth begging for or
See,
not? I asked for money a year ago. I don't know if people want to give me money again. You got to like pick your battles about like which
that
films
well
you
will dry
fund,
up quickly.
Like crowdfund.
And the reality is, like, I mean, how many friends does any given person have? Like maybe 100 realistic?
Yeah, like real friends.
And even if they all gave $25 or even $100, like that's $10,000. That doesn't go very far when you're making a feature documentary or even a short. It's because people need to get paid. We have lives, we have rent, everything. But the Pilates film, what we did is, you know, we had entered this community. We told them our intentions. We want to make the endless summer of Pilates. We want to like do something that the community can celebrate. You know, like a year from today, we're all going to meet up and have these incredible pizza party screenings. And that's kind of what the promise of the Kickstarter was. And people were really into that. So we raised all of the production budget through the Kickstarter, which was amazing.
And how much was that?
$9,800. We're talking like 2009, and Carrie and I were shooting everything, so we weren't paying anybody at that point. Those were like hard expenses.
Right, but when you're like 20 years old, $10,000 is
that's
like
still
go make a movie. Here's
something.
$10,000. It like felt like we hit the jackpot.
And then also to make that, I think to your point of being a new filmmaker and new to the category that you're in, we would be like, hey, we're making this film, we're coming to town, and just kind of allowing people to host you, because they'll be like, oh yeah, you could stay at our place. And when you're young and new, you're like, yeah, okay, I'll sleep on your floor because we don't have any money. And just like taking that as also an opportunity to get to know your subject a little bit more. If they're offering you into their life, I think that's what helped also coming into that.
You become like so much more, like the trust is huge, because they're like, this person is sleeping on my Pilates studio floor.
Right.
They must like really be into this thing. Like, I'm going to give them all day tomorrow and the next.
It's a superpower as an independent filmmaker. Like, you are not coming in with a ton of money to like shoot an interview and get the heck out. Like, you're there to make a film because you care. You care enough to sleep on the floor or wherever you need to, or to sleep in your car or whatever. I think that goes a long way toward trust. And so don't be afraid to do that, I guess, would be the advice.
The intimacy is unmatched, you know. And I was like, I brought it up to Leia. I was like, you think in your like documentary courses, and I brought this up to the professor, like, what if you slept over at their house, you know, like, would that be an accepted thing?
Yeah, that's a good point. It gets gray, because like,
but logistically it normally works out well.
It works out so well, because right then the whole schedule, you're right there when they wake up, and you know there's never something you're gonna miss because they didn't tell you, because you're there.
It's funny because you can't really assume that someone will host you, right? But I think that is an ideal situation, because you are like closest to them. You can have those moments where you're just like having breakfast and you're not filming.
I guess there's a balance.
Yeah, sure.
So you raised $9,800 on Kickstarter. You made the movie.
Met a lot of great people. And one of the perks was, you know, you get the movie, and then we had this other one that was like, you get like a VIP screening. And we like, I think valued it at $350 or something. And it turned out that like people wanted to have that screening. That was like, even though they paid us $350, they were just like, nope, we're gonna buy our screening package and we wanna have this screening because we support the film. And like, they were happy with how it turned out. So we had a really cool grassroots screening tour. I can't remember the exact number of places that we went, but it was substantial, like all over the U.S.
A lot of people pay to host, like for travel, to come in and have the director speak and everything. And that what was interesting about that is that it was like one studio felt like it was so important that they would pay someone's travel to come speak about a film that meant so much to them. So in that case, like, you're connecting with people who value what you're doing so much that they're going to take funds and time to build something around it, to celebrate it. And I think that's, you know, you can't do that with every film, of course, but if you can find an audience like that, don't overlook that, I think, is the advice. Like, you know, like we were saying, you have to balance being creative with making money. But if you have that kind of an audience as a filmmaker, you don't get the opportunity to share the experience of your film with an audience like that every time.
How do you package it? Like, how did you come up with that idea of like having a screening package?
A couple people reached out and they wanted to have screenings, and I was just like doing it on the fly, sending them like instructions on how to, you know, like what kind of hookup you need from your laptop to your projector, and like sending a link to like a company that rents it and mails it to your house. And then finally I was like, you know what, just make like a Dropbox folder that has like a step-by-step crash course with like template posters, and just send it to them and then wait to see if they have any problems. Like, don't be so, you know, proactive, just be like reactive to whatever they come up with. And it ended up kind of being like 90% of the time you wouldn't hear anything. You would get like some photos after the fact of them being like, the screening was awesome, you know, we had 45 people or something. And like, that's a really meaningful audience. Like, I think you don't have to fill an atrium, like 45 people in, you know, small town somewhere, or not even small town, like a neighborhood screening. That's worth it.
So what was in that Dropbox folder? Like, you had like, this is where you get your projector. This is where you like a
checklist of like all the things that you need to do to have a successful screening, like, you know, set a date. Things that you would think maybe are too straightforward aren't too straightforward. Like, people love a good checklist. It used to be
like something you read through and you're like, okay, I did that, check. I did that, check. Like, I have a date, I have a venue, I have someone who's going to prep posters, and it's just like walk them through.
Here's like sample.
When he did the Pilates film, I think it was like a clunky Dropbox folder of these things. For the film we recently did, we made like a digital toolkit that's like, you print it off and it's like a magazine. You read through it. It's got visuals. It's got, it's digital, so it links out to the, like, if you want to print a poster or an invitation, social media post, that's all in there. The press kit's in there. Discussion guide is in there. And you just basically say, you know, if you would like to host your screening, it costs, depending on if you're a nonprofit or not, $350. We'll send you the toolkit, we'll send you the whatever film you need, and you do it on your own.
So it's like public exhibition license and toolkit.
Right. What was your cost versus profits, like your profits and losses on doing something? Like your $350 I pay you, I do a screening in, San Diego, California, and then how much are you guys like taking home from each screening?
So during that time, I would send you a Blu-ray that had like a nice note on it that says like, this is a screening Blu-ray, please send it back if you, think about it. And most of the time everyone did. So I was able to probably, I don't know, like $20 in cost per screening. And then the rest was revenue coming into the film.
I mean, so it's not just like, oh, you're getting the toolkit, you're getting the license to show the film publicly. And in that, I think it's important, but maybe not necessary to offer it that they can use it as a fundraiser for their studio. So if they want to charge ticket sales, they pay $350, but they could charge $20 a ticket or, have some other fundraiser part of it.
And you don't care about, they do that.
We tried to think about, maybe we could like cost share. It's too messy.
Yeah.
Just set your price and let it go. It was too much.
And it's like self-serving. I kind of like the idea of, because we've been like hosting screenings ourselves and it's a lot of work. It's kind of fun to say, hey, like here's an example of this screening that we did. Here's this for dummies guide of like how to do it.
Right.
And you just pay me a flat fee. You do it all yourself. Here's all the marketing materials, and it like handles itself.
And it's empowering for them because they now are the ones driving and they know their audience and their organization. And like Carrie said, if they want to, raise money for a cause and that's great. Like it's not worth it for us to have our hands in it to get like 10% of, $1,000 that they raise. Much rather just do like flat rate, $350, $500, depending on whatever it is. And then we can focus on what we're good at, which is making the next film and continuing to have, something to be able to, I guess it's like a little bit of intellectual property that like the Pilates movie, there's still screenings happening. And that film was finished in 2012. So it's 10 years old.
Wow.
But like this feeling of gathering to celebrate something that you care about never gets old.
How do you get that out there? Like who taught you how to do this?
I think the thing is that with this one, I think, because I was kind of on the outside at this point, but I was part of it a little bit. And I think what happened is we got really lucky because the friend who introduced Mark to the Pilates, she's every year going to this convention for Pilates. It's called the PMA, the Pilates Method Alliance. And it's like 1,000 people just gathering to celebrate Pilates, all the new things and talking. And they let us have a screening. So everyone got to see the film there. And then there we said, if you'd like to show this in your town, you can reach out to us and we'll send you everything you need to do that. So it was like conferences.
Conferences are huge, yeah. And it's not, I wouldn't call it luck. I think there was a lot of agency of us being like, this place is the center of the Pilates universe. Like we need to let them know that like we want to be there. We want to like offer whatever we have. And we went an entire year before the premiere and we filmed there because we told them like, this feels like this is the epicenter of Pilates. Can we document this? So you're building trust like at least a year before you even talk about like coming back to show the film or sell anybody anything.
Right.
And then by the time it was done.
That was also great because, especially for that film, we got like a room of like 400 people doing Pilates together. It was beautiful visual. So it can even be part of like, you could go to a conference to show your film, fine, but like you could even go there to, build your film. Yeah. And then meeting people.
But like, for all anyone knows, it was just like these people decided to do Pilates and we popped a camera down and captured it.
What other unique ways do you think that as a documentary filmmaker, people can make money? Because I feel like this is the first time I've heard like this screening package in that particular way. That's very like self-serving. Like you like set it up and you could continue to make money on it 10 years later. Like that's really unique.
It's honestly a genius business plan.
Yeah.
To kind of go off of that, we've hired, we don't have them now, but we'll hire a part-time person to say, hey, call, for example, like Local American Legions. It's a veteran service organization. And see if they'd like to use the film as a fundraiser. And then you can hire someone to kind of, market that for you. And it's so packaged perfectly that like, you know, it's an easy thing to hire out for a part-time or an intern or something like that. And you can kind of hand that off to them because they don't have to organize the screening. They don't
It's
have
already
to
done. Yeah. It's just the point of contact.
Yeah, they just need to be decent at making a foot in the door
I mean, it's
conversation.
the sales. Maybe you'd be good at it. We're not. That's why we like look to other people for that. We're not good at sales. We learned that. But other ways that we make money, depending on the film, if there's a certain group that we feel aligns well, but isn't going to be like, oh, clearly they funded it, we'll do like kind of a branded thing. Like, hey, we're making this film. Would you like to support it? And we'll put, I mean, it's like all ski films, how they have a brand at the end. But we've done it with like for this one, it was like the tourism board.
And so you approach them in that scenario.
Yeah, and you say, you know, this is, a lot of times we've already made the film. And we're like, this is what it is. Which then it keeps their opinions out of the right.
And they don't want their opinion in it. That's the other thing.
They prefer something easy. They're like,
yeah, they want to look at something that's already done and
put
say,
my name on it.
It helps if you have a distribution plan because then they're like, oh, I know this is going to be on PBS. Great. But
have a distribution plan.
But even like if you have the right brand and you're just going to festivals, brands like to be at festivals as well. So for example, we're here at a festival and we're working with one of our partners and they were like, okay, we'll sponsor the stickers. So they get their logo on the sticker and that's another sponsorship thing. So you can do physical sponsorships as well. Or like a screening we're doing in Utah, we're partnering with somebody who's paying our screening fee, but then partnering with someone else to fund a free DVD for everyone there. So then that's like another sponsorship thing. So you can like package your sponsorships to get more people involved. And I think that being creative with what you have that's valuable, like if you have an audience's eyes and ears, maybe a partner wants those eyes and ears as well. Or they want to have a table set up at your event, something like that. You can create, and it doesn't have to be like they're selling you something or they're in your face. Like you can create a good community of people at an event with like say 4 or 5 tables, and it's not so, it's not so hard. Just call them up and say, hey, we're working with these people. Would you like to join us for the event?
Yeah, I get you kind of have to like put yourself in their shoes a little bit. So these are like ad executives, and they buy billboards. So like, where is your billboard? What street is it on, and what's on it? So like, our billboard is a film about this girl climbing mountains. What street is it on? It's on Comic-Con. So like, we're introducing this potential sponsor to a property, I guess, and then working on what's that worth to them, what do we need, what value comes out of it.
Right, I was just gonna say, like, is it on the pitch deck, do you have a number in mind? Is it something that you just show the film and you're like, are you interested, and then you talk numbers, or you think about the value first and you're like, this is how much it costs?
Yep, definitely. I would always come with a price and have a list of prices of like, this is the top value, here's the second, here's the third tier. Always, have the ability to negotiate and be able to work with them to like, hear what they value and what they need to get out of it. But we tried the first version where we have no idea what it's worth or what we need out of it, and it's just not a good conversation each way.
It's hard to pitch. They're like, like, what are you going to use the money for? Or like, how many people are going to see it? Or...
And what we found too is a lot of times we're like, so it's going to cost us this much for travel, this much goes into this line, and then we present that to them, and that's not as effective either. They just want to say like, what is the value of this sponsorship at this level? $5,000. Great. We have a budget for that. We believe that the return that we're getting on it is of that value.
Most people don't want to break down if you're like working with like a corporate marketing person. I think they just want a number and they write an invoice and they're done. They don't want to follow up with you. It's not a grant. You don't have to account for like, we flipped our flight and it ended up being a little less and we moved it here.
Yeah, they don't care about your personal life.
They want a flat number.
Yeah.
They want to know and pick and be done.
Yeah.
And see that it was worth it. Like,
right.
They want to see that, okay, that thing at Comic-Con was really cool. The film played, they had a good audience. But they don't care about, we had to cancel our car and switch to another company and like ended up costing us more. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say about working with partners is that it's really hard to just call up a company or an organization and think you're gonna wow them. It's so hard to call someone and say, hey, I need time out of your day to tell you about something you don't know about that you're gonna need to spend money on.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that.
Yeah. How do you break through?
To be honest, the conference thing is helpful for that because you get face-to-face time. And even if that person at that specific organization isn't the marketing person or the person that's going to help you, you can say, hey, do you have someone you can connect me with? And then they've seen your face and they're not going to, usually they don't ghost you. They can make an intro, or you can email someone and say, hey, I met your colleague so-and-so at the conference and they mentioned I should reach out. And I don't think we've ever gotten support from a person that we haven't had an in-person interaction with or a very long time to get to know.
Like a legitimate connection. I think it comes down to just like, you need to know them, they need to know you. You're not selling them junk. Like, it's something that has to come organically about, and it takes time. So I would say, as soon as you start making a film, start thinking about like, who could some of these potential partners be, and send them a rough cut, get them involved, like get them excited about it, and don't even talk long game. Don't talk like, oh yeah, and in a year from now, I'm gonna try to sell you a commercial on PBS, because like, who knows, maybe you don't even go that route, but like, you want them as just a supporter of what you're doing. And then maybe a year from now, it turns out that they're having their 50th anniversary of a company. And it's like, you know what if we screened our 7-minute film as you talk about how your company's been doing great work for this particular community. And then they now have like a budgeted item in their 50th party to like pay for your film to play. So after you do all these very creative things, there is always like just the old school like video on demand that, maybe you go with a third-party distributor, or maybe you like sell off to a streamer or somebody or a network. Sure, that's great. The trade-off is you're giving up all the rights. The good thing is they pay you money and you can go off and make your next film. If you keep the rights, you can always get like a Vimeo Pro account, and you just have like this property that now every time you have a screening, if someone likes that, they're gonna go home and tell someone about it. And there's like a place on the internet that it lives and they can rent it. So it's like maybe you get 1 or 2 rentals a week or a month or something like that. But still, it's like...
Where have you done that? What website or platform have you used before?
So we used to use Amazon. They had like Amazon Prime had a really easy like indie streaming. Since then, they've kind of like started to move away from letting people come on unvetted. Vimeo Pro has like a really good video on demand. You can embed it in your own website, so it looks like it's really clean, comes straight out of your own design, and it's not like a third-party website. You set your own prices. Their commission's not terrible, but it allows you to like, the thing when somebody comes up and they're like, hey, where can I see your film? And you can send them a link.
And they could just buy it for
exactly
$1 or whatever.
Yeah, it's like $2.99.
What have you priced it before, or how do you?
I think the Pilates film now is $2.99 to rent, $9.99 to buy on the streaming, or like $20 to get a DVD. And people still do all 3 of those. There's like, if somebody supports the work, then a lot of times they'll buy it just to have it.
Do you have to do anything when they buy a DVD?
So sometimes we have seasonal help that comes on during certain times where like sales are higher. But on occasion, I'll have to like mail off a DVD, which is, it's not bad work, but it keeps you in check. It's like, director has to send his own DVD to somebody in Pennsylvania. Like that's,
Did you have another thing about money you wanted to talk about too?
Yeah. And then I guess the last thing is just thinking about like the way the bigger system works and being like savvy on controlling kind of like, you're the producer. So like you're making this thing, you get to decide every outlet, of exploitation of this property. And a lot of times you can like give it away and not know about it. And one of those is if you're using music. So say you hire a composer and you pay them and they have a score, or you license music. As a producer, you're technically the publisher of that. And when it comes down to royalties, there's 2 sides. So like, say your film plays on public television, then the public television station has to pay out a musical royalty. Half of it goes to the music artist, the other half goes to the publisher. And if you're the producer and you've registered the music with like ASCAP or one of these recording agencies, then you're getting, whatever, 20 cents per play.
So you
for each
should
song.
register your composed music is what
Yeah, and as a good producer, you should be doing it for your composer anyway, because that's how they also make a living on royalties. But a lot of times people forget that, like, no, you are the publisher of this music. They're the artist, they're the writer. And
What website was that again?
so the one we use is ASCAP.
It's an acronym though.
Yeah.
ASCAP, I think.
Yep.
But it's an organization that
Yeah.
looks out for musicians and producers. That their job is to look at and find when your music's being played, and then make sure you get that.
Yeah, so they collect the royalties from the network and then distribute it to the publisher and the artist. People are still like entitled to their contribution to something. And even if it's small, like as soon as you start forgetting about it, then that's when it like all of a sudden disappears and contracts change and networks keep more and give out less. And then the independent producers die out. So it's kind of like our duty to protect those revenue streams.
So are you guys solely generating revenue off of your original ideas?
We are now, yeah.
Yeah,
for the
now we
last
are.
2 years.
I would say early on when we first started, we would be also using the other skills that we had. Like I studied chemistry, so I was tutoring a lot, and that really helps supplement. And Mark, I think as a filmmaker, you have to know what you're best at, and you can utilize that to make money. So he's a great editor. He's also a great shooter. So he could, tag on to another project, or we could, help others and make money that way when you're starting out. And then slowly you start to realize, okay, we've got enough things, on each, like you were saying, at each level, development, shooting, post-production, and distribution, that you can kind of let your projects flow through, and you can, keep a steady state of income. But I think early on, you can't be too proud to just do what you're good at to make money at it, and then slowly get your projects going. But yeah, right now, we that's the only way we make money.
Just your original documentaries.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
For now,
No,
yeah.
congratulations. That's like a
that's
massive accomplishment.
Massive accomplishment.
That's like the side where I feel like our bread and butter is in branded stuff for companies. That's the bread and butter of how we're currently making revenue. And then our originals is where we're trying to get where you're at with your originals and making that much more part of what we're doing. But
Yeah, it's kind of like a slow turnover, and all of a sudden you realize it's happened. But I think, there's also, we say, well, this is the only way we're making money, which is true, but it's not like a ton of money all the time. So it's like you have to,
You've got to balance.
stick with it.
The feast and famine mentality of
yeah,
like,
that's for sure.
Yeah.
As long as it lasts, we'll keep doing it. And then if it doesn't, you always have to be able to pivot back. And so I think, knowing what you can fall back on is also comforting.
Yeah.
Be like, okay, if I had to go back and teach chemistry, I could do that for a bit. Or if he needed to hop on and edit another project, that's fine too. It's.
Yeah, and I think you don't always, you're right, it's flexible in the way that you don't have one model and stick with it forever. Like, you work on projects in different capacities. So for example, like co-productions is a whole other thing where, maybe we have certain access to a subject, but we're not the person to tell the story. But we help facilitate that connection, and we become part of the project. And, those are can vary from, no money at all to all of a sudden you have like a Netflix show or something because you've become like an associate producer, or, well, in that case, probably an actual producer. And that's maybe not necessarily like your original idea. You're not like the filmmaker behind it, but it's still something that like you cared enough to be involved with, and there was some value there financially and personally.
yeah, what would you say was like the secret sauce to making it your original films, like your main like source of income? And I don't know if there's like a specific stage in production that you guys focus in that is like where you feel like you have like maybe an advantage or something, but yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, personal, character driven with a side of adventure, to bridge the gap between, it's not just historical, but it's like kind of the Pilates film. It wasn't just the history of Pilates, it was like the surf film version of Pilates. Like, we don't approach a topic unless we can bring that value add of like, is there a personal way in? If so, is this character really interesting and intriguing, and can they carry us on this journey? And is there like a physical journey? I think all of our films have to like transport both us and the audience. We've never told like a story, that like plays out in headlines. That's just like,
I think
not us.
you say something like the secret sauce. I think that is, like Mark said, for your personal projects, you're pouring so much into it. You're sacrificing a lot. You're putting the money in. Don't only do projects that you can see it. Like, make the one you want. Don't make the one you think people want. Or don't stick with a project if it's not going. And then hustle like crazy for distribution. Like, you can't make a beautiful, wonderful film and then no one sees it. Like, we've had that before where we're like, this film is great, but we're so exhausted and we've only just started distribution. And like, that is the long run. Like, you gotta have endurance on that for sure. I think the secret sauce is perseverance on the whole process from development through distribution.
Starting with the end in mind. Sounds like you guys are good at that.
Yeah.
Because that's a not everybody thinks like that, right?
You're just tapping into the audience better. Like, I feel like, and I can speak from my own experience, like, I'm so obsessed with like making the best film. Like, I'm so obsessed with like just making the thing. But then when the thing is made, then it's like, now what? You know?
Yeah.
And it's very confusing about like, you have this beautiful thing. We have 100% of the rights, right? But like, you don't have the experience of like what that actually means, all the different screening opportunities. Like, you think, oh, I want to just make my Netflix movie, but there's lots of other like small pockets and potentially even more meaningful like screenings and experiences that you can have if you just like really understand who your audience is.
I would say definitely more meaningful. Maybe not more financially savvy, but like you're like, we had, I mean, this really great film we made. It went on PBS and then it was like millions and millions of people. What was the coverage? Like 180 million people saw this film.
Wow.
But you don't meet a single one of them.
Right.
And then we have another film and you go and screen it with 40 people and someone comes up to you and gives you a hug. It like feels like it's your wedding night. You have this like connection and purpose for existing that is like nothing else. So the meaning behind these screenings that are smaller is just like completely uncomparable to whatever the biggest distribution deal is. But you do need money, so sometimes you trade a little bit of that
you can hold
feeling.
both of those at the
you
same
can have
time.
both. You can have both. That's the cool thing. And I think now, even like Netflix deals, like producers should definitely like when they go into those deals, be like, okay, you can have everything, but I still get to have community screenings. That's very important to me because I made this film because I want to connect with people, and I don't want to connect with them virtually on a late night scroll. Like, I want to book out a community center. I want to bring in a panel of people and like put in some time and effort because like this is your life. You've given a year to it.
Right. I think each episode has sort of organically created its path of like, what is the main piece of value that gets out of this? I feel like we've dove a little deeper on like how you guys have
just like
made
the audience. Like, you guys really tap into the audience well on the distribution, because I think I agree with what you said of like, I just get like burnt out by the time that the film is done, and you really need to like have that endurance to be like, no, like this is why we made it in the first place, and to like kind of have that. Well, but you have to know what to do with it.
But it gave you energy because you thought about distribution at the beginning.
Right.
I think that's a good point, you know, but as you're making the film, you're meeting, like you meet your character, you meet their friends, you meet the people surrounding them. And I think to keep in mind the audience there is, you know, ask them like, hey, what do you guys do? You know, your performances, what kind of an audience comes here? And just as you're exploring your topic in the filmmaking, also explore the audience in the filmmaking and be like, oh, actually, I think that'd be a great opportunity for us to have a big event there. And then maybe we can get someone to sponsor, I don't know, a paint set or something, and we can give that out, or a raffle or something like that. And you can make the night a bit bigger, and just like be thinking of that as you go. I think bringing on more partners is better because they don't only bring on their funding, they bring on people. So your event becomes bigger. So you can like think, okay, this organization has like however many people. Maybe they don't have as much money, but they'll bring all their people. Sometimes that's better.
Right.
But yeah, so in closing, if you're thinking about all the list type thing, it all comes back to the audience and how can you interact with them. But I think sponsorships for sure, of like if you have a distribution plan, they can
corporate,
or nonprofits, foundations, etc. But just, I mean, grants are a thing, but grants, I don't know if you guys do grants, but
it's a lot. Before we close, I want to talk about grants one quick second. We started our filmmaking career applying for filmmaking grants, and I never got a single one. Hundreds.
Never.
Not a single one.
But we've gotten a lot of grants. but they've never been from filmmaking institutions. And I'm grateful that those exist, and I'm grateful that people get them, but I don't think you should lose hope if you're not getting them. And the ones that we've gotten are grants that fund adjacent things that our film touches. So we did like a screening tour where we talked about, folk storytelling, which falls into the humanities category. And there's a lot of great humanities grants that they won't make your film for you, but they'll
give you money.
Fund an evening where you talk about the importance of folk storytelling and screen your film.
Even if your film touches something like the arts, you can get an arts council grant to fund your film because it's supporting something like that. And those tend to be, they don't get any film applications usually,
right,
something like
that.
that.
You stand out more because in a filmmaking grant, it's a bunch of filmmakers.
It's so
they're
hard
incredibly
to stand out.
competitive.
And they're super competitive.
Yeah.
But then if you're thinking about it from so many different angles, it'll be like, oh, a film, cool. Like a lot of other people are doing research papers, or I don't know what other things that people are doing, but you stand out more as a film.
Or there's like you've volunteered before to read through all the applications, watch their films, and you're a very smart, critical, like deep
It's super
thinker,
competitive.
and it's so competitive because also
and it's
like
subjective too. Whoever's
Right.
reviewing your stuff, like it's extremely subjective. It's extremely, you don't know what they're looking for. Also, like you could be the perfect candidate, but if they already have another jujitsu film, they're not going to pick our jujitsu film.
Yeah.
Like for
Right.
example, like
Or, yeah.
so you're competing for
there's a
a
medley of
spot
things.
that they kind of already have their own little like
Or-
box that they're thinking about putting you in.
I think a lot of grants also, they're looking for people with probably more experience. And so when you're applying when you're early on, that's where you hear and you're like, oh, $100,000. Like, yeah, I want that. 50,000, let's go. And then you're super like juiced on the idea of it. And then you do it and then you get denied. But it's like year 2 of being a filmmaker.
Yeah, they
And
want a
it's
sure
like-
thing.
Right. They want someone who's 10 years into it, who knows, who's got a budget, who's like super dedicated, has experience in failing in their feature before.
So
you
other
know.
grants that are not from
Other
filmmaking.
grants, yeah.
You have a finished film. Now how do you monetize it? What's the list?
So I think the first thing, you finish the film, and now you have this community that you've built, and they want to show the film. So you have the public license to rent to them, essentially, so that they can show the film in their community. So you give them permission to make a great event, and they pay you.
I like it. And then on top of that, you can also give the option to have a filmmaker Q&A and make the event bigger. So then you get to charge a speaking fee, which is often a lot bigger than the licensing fee. So
What do you typically see?
for corporate, we charge $500 for the public exhibition license and $350 for a nonprofit. And then depending on, we usually say $4,000 plus travel, but we're 2 people. And oftentimes people can't pay that. So then we're like, okay, well, what can you afford? Or can we bring on another partner?
That's the main thing.
Always ask if they're open to another partner, because it's a lot easier to ask for half from someone and half from the other. And then they both bring their audience, and it's a bigger event anyway. It's great for everyone.
And I want to make sure we don't move over that too quickly. There's a lot of value in having a filmmaker come and speak about their film. So $3,500, $4,000 for like a keynote speaker at a screening, that's reasonable. I don't think filmmakers should be discounting it to free.
I've heard up to 10 grand. So it depends on who your audience. Like if you're working with a very well-funded organization, you can ask for whatever you want to ask for, and if they say yes, then great. But oftentimes they don't say yes, so you gotta be flexible. And I wouldn't let it go just because they don't have the money.
Yeah,
it's more valuable than that. If it's a good fit and they want to have an event, figure out a way to make it happen. I would say so.
And people let you bring your own money, meaning if you say, hey, I really want to come to the screening, my fee is $3,500, and they say, unfortunately, we don't have that, then you say, well, I may have a potential third-party sponsor that, say if we put a 10-second pre-roll at the beginning of the film that has a positive message that connects the film and this company, and it pays my way, are you open to that? 99% of the time they'll say, yes, that sounds amazing, as long as there's no like conflict of interest with the company. We always say like, we don't take money from bad Santas. Like it has to be like an organic connection between the film, us, and the third party.
Pre-roll is that's a good one for the list. Pre-roll at an event. That's the way you can
sell a
make money.
commercial that goes on the front of your film. But you don't want to
for each event.
For each event,
Yeah.
exactly.
So that's unique.
It is.
Yeah, to each event, yeah.
And we try to keep it as clean as possible. You don't want your film to look like a NASCAR, with all these logos all over it, because the audiences kind of see that, and it just takes away from the experience. So once you're at the event, you've spoken, have something that people can take away.
Mm-hmm.
It seems crazy, but like DVDs, it's a thing that people can take home. Even if they don't have a DVD player, it's like a modern postcard or something. It's just like...
A lot of people send DVDs to people. They're like, oh, I'm going to send this to my son. I'm going to send that. I'm like, I don't think your son has a DVD player.
But even
feel
if
free
they
to send
don't,
it.
I was
like-
just going to say, yeah, like, does anyone have a DVD player these days?
So that's the third part. Have a place on the DVD, a link they can go to and stream it. So whether you want to have it like a QR code and they can stream it for free, or it's just like the Vimeo Pro, they pay $2.99. Like, I would do that, if my dad like sent me a DVD in the mail, he's like, you got to see this, and I didn't have a DVD player, but there's a link to stream it. I would pay the extra $2 and watch it. But the main thing is like giving the people at the screening the power to champion your work and like take it further.
Another thing is if you have a bunch of festivals coming up, or if you have a distribution plan already, you can present a finished film to an organization or potential sponsor and say, hey, do you want to come with us on our distribution? And then they can tag on to that for the rest of the time. And that can be super valuable. If you have a big audience from that, you can say, we're expecting to see this many thousand people. Then you just tag their thing on at the end.
After you've done all of this, you still have the rights available to sell for, through like a sales agent for international distribution. There's tons of public television stations abroad, just like there are in the United States. They're all looking for content. A lot of times, like, we as producers don't know who those buyers are, but if you bring on like a sales agent and, sell your film in Europe, especially if there's a connection, like geographically thinking about where will this story resonate.
Right.
And then keeping those rights to continue all of the other things you're still doing. Like, you always want to be able to like go into a school and show your film. That's like the
Educational
scariest thing I can
screenings,
imagine, to like be a filmmaker, spend years of my life making a film and not be able to go talk about it at like a high school because I've sold the rights to somebody. And
So keep your educational and community screening rights for sure.
Unless you like have a specific educational direction you're going with and you have a distributor for that and that's what you want, that's great as well. But just be smart and don't give it away if you don't have to, because a lot of places will want all your rights and they don't use them all. So why do they need them? You don't have to. If you work with your public television station and you get a good relationship, that's also a good thing to have in your pocket. It's Wyoming PBS, so they're very supportive. Would recommend.
I think the other thing is never forget about it too. Like, even this Pilates film, I put 2 years of my life into it. It felt like, the center of my life for a long time. And then eventually you slowly start to move past it. And then somebody reaches out to you saying they just saw it and it moved them in a way and they want to have a screening. And it's just a reminder that, like, how many times do we go back and watch old films that meant something to us? So
yeah,
like,
reviving an old film. I met one filmmaker and he's like, I am doing 10 screenings across the country of a film I made 20 years ago, and it's been bananas. Like, people love to come back to that and just, dig that out.
If the meaningful message is there for them, right? Like, why won't it resonate still?
And making sure that it's accessible to people still. Like, you can't just, I guess you could upload it to YouTube and hope it just stays there. But every film we make, we kind of think that, like, you know what, we just have to make this last film. And you pour yourself into it, and sure enough, another story comes up that you just have to pursue, and you just have to pursue. Like, we don't think about it as, like I said, there's no CEO of our company that's like planning for growth and keeping the shareholders happy. And like, the trajectory is kind of led by whether or not we still have it in our soul to do this. And it's, as we talked about, like, it sounds like a fun life, but it could be pretty tiring and long hours, and it has to be worth it personally, more than it has to be worth it financially, because there's easier ways to make more money quicker.
Oh, for sure. Especially when you're both in it together, like, life partners. Right. If it's not fun, don't do it. It's probably not worth it.
Yeah. One of our core values is fun. So
yeah,
it's got to be fun, because you're doing the majority of your life is this. Yeah. And if it's like not fun and you have to take a vacation from this, then that's like, for us, that's a sign of we need to adjust something. I mean, everyone needs vacation and like.
Yeah. I think we're all set here. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was great.
Yeah, thanks for coming, guys.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening and or watching. I hope you found this useful. If you did, give us a rating. This will really help us grow our audience and better serve you. Also, if you love talking docs, join our weekly Discord Wednesdays at 5 p.m. PST, where we discuss a doc of the week and check in with each other. Talk soon.